Welcome, everyone, to the Information's TITV. My name is Akash Pasricha. It is Monday, July 13th. Before we get started, this is TITV's one-year anniversary week. We'll be coming to you from the Bay Area all week, filming special episodes in San Francisco and across Silicon Valley. Tomorrow is our 250th episode. You do not want to miss it. We have a jam-packed lineup. On today's show, Apple is suing OpenAI in a stunning development for the growing rivalry between these two companies. We'll bring on our Apple reporter to unpack the latest on that. We're then talking about Wall Street's biggest bet on blockchain yet with our crypto reporter. Stephanie Palazzolo, author of our AI Agenda newsletter, is back from the big ICML AI Research Conference in South Korea. We'll chat with her about her key takeaways from the event. And we'll wrap things up with a conversation with the Laude Institute about the big themes that they're watching in AI research and their reaction to the latest big model releases. It's going to be a fun show, so let's get right on into it. Apple is suing OpenAI, accusing the AI company of stealing company secrets. The lawsuit was filed Friday in the Northern District of California. I want to bring on our Apple reporter, Aaron Tilley, to break down what we know and where this is likely to go from here. Aaron, welcome back to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
Okay, big lawsuit. Tell us what's in it. Let's start there.
Yeah, so Apple filed a lawsuit against OpenAI alleging that there has been a systematic effort on behalf of at OpenAI on the devices team to steal proprietary Apple knowledge related to product development all the way to supply chain and manufacturing methods. So this has been the allegations Apple's making is very serious. The OpenAI is doing things in a very sneaky way. Apple alleges that OpenAI folks are purposely hiding their efforts and trying to bypass Apple's security. So pretty serious allegations.
I want to go through some of the big allegations in here, but there are two people that are at the center of this lawsuit, Tang Tan and Chang Liu. Tell us about who they are and why they are so central to this lawsuit.
Yeah, so Tang is currently the chief hardware officer at OpenAI. He was a long time, over 2 decades, Apple hardware engineer. Near the end, he led all of Apple's just iPhone product development. So very important person at Apple. He left in 2024. He co-founded IO Products alongside former Apple design chief Johnny Ive, and then OpenAI acquired it for $6.5 billion in stock last year. So he leads all of OpenAI's device hardware projects. And then Chang is a little more of a younger, one of the younger employees, less seasoned, but very experienced engineers from Apple that OpenAI recently brought over. He left Apple in January and joined OpenAI, so he's only been there for a couple months. But yeah, Apple accuses him of bypassing Apple security and accessing Apple networks on an ongoing basis while employed at OpenAI.
And so the details in this lawsuit are pretty stunning. I mean, some of the details here, from what I recall, it's the idea that they asked people when they were interviewing for OpenAI, they were at Apple, they asked them to basically bring parts, components, I guess, of hardware to the OpenAI office. Am I recalling this correctly?
Yeah, they accused Tang during interviews of requesting engineers to bring actual parts and do a sort of quote unquote show and tell. And so, taking parts to these interviews, and then also accused Tang of asking about ongoing secret projects using project code names and asking about updates for that. Yeah, using his already pretty substantial knowledge about Apple and kind of use to dig more information out from current Apple employees.
So, Aaron, I want to just take a step back here for a minute. You've been covering Apple for a long time. Apple has one of the most extensive supply chains, if not the most extensive supply chain in technology today. Have you ever seen a lawsuit like this? I mean, a show and tell. I mean, we'll get to what OpenAI is saying about this in a second. We'll get to the response, but are these types of lawsuits, are they common in the hardware business? Have you seen anything like it?
There are echoes of previous lawsuits. For example, Apple went after a chip startup in 2019 called Nuvia. It was co-founded by former Apple engineers, and the company ended up recruiting a large number of Apple chip engineers. And Apple really didn't like that. They accused the company of sort of similar behavior. Well, somewhat different, not as serious kind of stealing, but you know,
Not a show and tell, but
not a show and tell of chips, but would certainly this is has some echoes of that. I just think of Apple really doesn't like former employees going after current employees to recruit them, and kind of the systematic effort that OpenAI certainly undertook is just not something Apple's been happy about, and we've seen it in the past. So similarities, but certainly the allegations of theft, of theft from OpenAI's part. That's quite serious and pretty wild.
And what is the evidence that Apple presents in the lawsuit for these things having happened? I mean, they say they did an investigation. Do they present any of their findings in detail?
Yeah, they quote messages that they were able to retrieve, especially from Chang. They had it appears like ongoing access to messages he would send, either to current employees, and it seems like they were able to do this because he retained an Apple work laptop. So perhaps they don't lay out specifically, but their security apparatus was able to access ongoing messages he was sending, even though he was a former Apple employee at that point. They also have just messages and conversations taking place between Tang and current employees. So they were probably able to retrieve that through interviews with current employees that went through the OpenAI interview process.
Right. So now, what is OpenAI saying about this? What's their response?
They haven't said much. So I think they were caught flat-footed when it all came out Friday afternoon. So far, it's just been, we have no interest in other companies' trade secrets, and we want to innovate for everyone. So pretty small response there, short response. We'll
Right.
see if they
Now,
do more.
you put out a story after this lawsuit broke, talking a little bit about how the tensions between OpenAI and Apple have been growing for quite some time leading up to the lawsuit. Walk us through a little bit of your reporting there, because I think we all recall the flashy Apple keynote where they unveiled that part of their AI would be powered by OpenAI. It was a union that I think surprised some people, but it hasn't been so great and since then, according to your reporting.
Yeah. So 2024 Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference, they come out with their sort of AI LLM. This is the generative AI. This is their strategy. And part of that strategy is partnership with OpenAI. Um, Sam Altman was at the conference, and it seemed like a very positive start to the relationship. But that didn't really last too long. It's been 2 years now, and the partnership hasn't yielded much for OpenAI. They're not getting much out of it. It was a very sort of very superficial integration where OpenAI ChatGPT was accessed in a very limited fashion via Siri and other Apple AI features, and it really didn't work out very well. And on top of that, OpenAI has begun a very aggressive endeavor of recruiting Apple hardware engineers from this Tang team.
Right. And
And
their OpenAI is now just starting their own devices. I mean, we don't have a clear idea as to what it is, but I mean, this hardware play is a direct competition to Apple.
for sure. Yeah, so that's been going on. The OpenAI now has over 400 Apple engineers working on this device project. And they, that's been very difficult for Apple. There's like very senior hardware folks going over there. Some of their best working on iPhone and Apple Watch and new hardware products that haven't been released. So this talent drain's been pretty rough for Apple.
And one name that wasn't included in the lawsuit, Jony Ive was not. I mean, he's such a central figure. I was surprised. What do we know about the Jony Ive factor here? I mean, I guess it was a clean transition for lack of better words, from what we know.
Yeah, that was interesting. They really kept him out of it. And I think that's like, maintaining some sort of friendly relations with him, I think is very intentional not to dip their toe, go too far. Suing the former sort of chief design officer, sort of the heir of the Steve Jobs sort of design philosophy, would maybe be a step too far for Apple. So they went one rung below that to Tang and kept it. They were a little less aggressive.
So then, I guess what I'm thinking about then is, even though Jony Ive is not named in the lawsuit and he's kept separate from all this, to what extent do you think this lawsuit stifles OpenAI's progress, Jony Ive's own capabilities here to develop the devices that they are set to release? I mean, there was a report out today that that they're still aiming to get a device out in the next year or two. Do you think that this stifles their progress at all?
I can't imagine how it won't stifle the progress. Yeah, they plan to release their first device February of next year. Um, Part of this lawsuit is demanding that the company doesn't use proprietary Apple information in this device. I don't know how OpenAI can work around that. They've already been working on this for the past year. Whatever plans they have in place, they can't just kind of upend that and go a completely different direction. So the device that comes out, Apple is going to be scrutinized intensely, and I'm sure they can find something to go after OpenAI about. So that could really, yeah, stop the release of this product, stop the sales of this product. They could get courts to intervene here. I'm sure this is going to be very tricky for OpenAI to navigate.
And just to recap, as best we know, OpenAI, is it a smart speaker type device that they're working on? What's the latest on that?
That's our understanding of the first OpenAI device, a smart speaker. Though we understand, a phone is in the works, and hopefully, maybe second device, third device. Who knows? It's the intention is a family of products. OpenAI helps to release, but a smart speaker is the first one.
Okay. And last question for you, Aaron. I'm sure you're talking to lawyers and legal experts in the background about this. What is your understanding of the timeline here for this lawsuit? What we can expect to happen next? Is this a matter of months, years? I mean, how long is this going to take to play out?
Yes, months, years, definitely.
All of the above.
This
The long-running legal battle. We'll have a flip phone by then.
Sure, we'll be back there.
Yeah. All right. Well, Aaron, I want to thank you for coming on. I trust that we will need more of your insight on this in the weeks to come. That is Aaron Tilley, our Apple reporter here at The Information. This week, a major stock market infrastructure company is set to demonstrate stock trading on blockchain. This is a transition that many people in crypto have been endorsing for a long time. The Information's crypto reporter Yueqi Yang has the latest. She published a piece on it this morning. I want to bring her on to talk all about it. Yueqi, welcome back to the show. It's great to have you here.
Hey, Akash.
All right, so let's talk about this company here, the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation. Not a name that I thought we would be talking about on the show. You wrote a whole story about them. Who are they and why do we need to know them?
So DTCC is the most important company that basically
I get it. It's cool. DTCC.
allows the U.S. Stock market to function because it provides a few services, mostly including the clearing of the stocks. The stock market trades clears at the DTCC for about $20 trillion worth of stocks per day, so it's a huge amount. They provide settlement of the stock, and then they also provide custody of the shares of the stocks. So they are getting into tokenization, which means they're starting to allow their members to move assets onto the blockchain. And the first step of that will happen this Wednesday when they demonstrate a few live real production trades of assets, including stocks, ETFs, and other treasuries and other assets that are going to move on the blockchain.
Have they picked which shares they're going to put on the block? Like, are these specific companies? Do we know anything about that?
Yeah, so they're allowed to pursue this tokenization effort because last year DTCC got the green light from the SEC to provide tokenization of assets, including the largest U.S. stocks that are making up the Russell 1000 index. And so that's going to be part of it. And the other assets like treasury bonds are also going to be part of the launch.
Now, is DTCC, are they the first to do this? Because, I mean, crypto companies have been talking a lot about doing this. I mean, my recollection, I feel like this has happened before, or am I wrong?
And they're approaching it with different methodology and different vantage point. So a few crypto companies, especially the crypto exchanges like Binance, Bybit, most recently Coinbase, are starting to list tokens that are backed by stocks. And then these tokens are usually issued by third-party providers rather than the issuer themselves. And then their play is more gearing towards retail distribution of these tokens. DTCC is different because they're a market infrastructure provider. They're providing a tokenization service to the members of the DTCC, which mostly includes big banks, trading firms, brokerages, etc. So this is more about institutional play.
So let's talk about the advantages and then also the limitations of tokenized stock trading. I mean, one clear advantage I think we've talked about is the 24/7 nature of blockchain and the fact that that is what it could bring to stock trading. Is it cheaper too? What are the benefits that we see?
That's a great question. I think whenever you read about companies pursuing blockchain initiative, the first question to ask is really what are the benefits, and what are something that blockchain enables that they can pursue in the traditional setup. And I think for the DTCC effort, there are a few benefits that they're trying to target. The first one is they're providing the ability for stocks that are already cleared, already settled, and are currently sitting at custody at DTCC to be tokenized so that companies can transfer these stocks in token format to each other. And why do you do that? That unlock a few benefits, including companies pledging these tokens as collateral so that they can get funding from another company, and they can do this 24/7, do it real time, and on the weekend as well. And
So
then
like margin trading, is that the idea?
it enables
Enable. I guess margin trading. This would be posting literal shares as collateral, not just on margin.
to get margin, to get leverage.
Right. Okay, so that's one benefit. I could see how that would allow some more risky behavior. Call it.
Well, margin trading always exists. Posting collateral, this process always exists, but you can do it in a different way on the blockchain, which brings some additional benefits with speed. Um, yeah, so there are other benefits as well. And personally, I find it the one that I find to be most interesting is that it potentially provides this bridge between the U.S. stock market and the crypto market because one potential outcome in the future is that for all these crypto exchanges that are providing crypto tokens backed by US stocks, they can potentially use the DTCC tokenized stocks as the underlying asset backing the stock crypto tokens. And that could, in theory, be a superior method than the current method because it's a more direct claim to the real stock that's sitting at the center of the most important market infrastructure we have in the US.
What about limitations to tokenized stock trading? Are there any?
I think it's important to point out that DTCC is not using blockchain to clear stocks. That's
Okay.
one of the most common misconception. DTCC itself said using blockchain to clear stocks is just impractical because every day it clears more than $20 trillion worth of stock. It's just there's no way to, and they net out a big percentage. Most of these stocks at the end of the day, meaning that companies trade back and forth, so they don't actually need to transfer money for each of the transactions. They net it out at the end of the day, and they only settle a small portion of those stocks. So this whole process of clearing and settlement is unchanged. They're not using blockchain for it, and they're really using blockchain to target a small part of this process, which is what you do with stocks that are already cleared, already settled, and just kind of sitting idly there at the DTCC.
And so, based on what they're saying, I mean, are they sort of suggesting that they won't ever be able to clear on blockchain? Are they saying that's a much bigger lift? I mean, is this a clear limitation, or is it just that they haven't gotten to it yet?
I think for now they don't have plans to use blockchain to clear trades.
Right.
Yeah, they gave me a statement saying that settlement models that rely entirely on gross settlement, which are common in some blockchain environments, simply do not work at this scale because there's not enough money in the system to support it.
Hmm. Yueqi, I mean, big picture here, is this moving faster or slower than you thought? I mean, we've been talking about trading stocks on the blockchain for quite some time. There were big ambitions for it. Is this what's your overall perspective on it and your opinion on how this is shaking out?
I think this is going to be a years-long effort. DTCC has been working on tokenization for many years already. This is an important step. It now has the support from regulators. So I think they are making a meaningful progress. But I also spoke to market structure experts for this story. One of them, Larry Tapp at Bloomberg, said he doesn't expect DTCC tokenized stocks to reach even 0.5% of the value of total traditional stocks. And then he mentioned this is just a really long, complex uh, process, and so it's going to take time.
Yueqi, I want to ask you very quickly about another story that we've been following. Circle got the green light for its bank charter. This was another story that has been in the works for a couple of years now. What is the significance of this bank charter? What does it allow them to do?
Circle got approval for a national trust charter. This is the widely expected news because Circle and a few other companies got the conditional approval of it late last year. And the significance of this approval is that it basically allows Circle to now have a federal regulator, which is the OCC. And this is as intended by the Genius Act. It means that there's a national regulator who's now regulating Circle stablecoins. And then in terms of additional services they can provide, Circle with its charter, they can now provide institutional custody using this national trust charter, and they can also manage the reserve assets backing up their stablecoins. And it's important to note that this is not a traditional full-service bank charter. It doesn't mean Circle is becoming a retail-facing bank. They're not going to take your deposit. They're not going to lend you money. This is a specific type of charter called National Trust Charter.
And Yueqi, do you expect other companies to go after this bank charter now, other crypto companies?
Yeah, it's a very popular charter for crypto firms to pursue this year, especially for the ones that are intending to issue stablecoins. So there are a few notable applicants. I think Stripe's Bridge is also another important one to watch. They also applied and for this national choice charter.
Great. Well, Yueqi, I want to thank you for coming on. That is Yueqi Yang, our crypto reporter here at The Information. Stephanie Palazzolo, our AI reporter and author of The Information's AI Agenda newsletter, is fresh off a trip to South Korea where she attended the International Conference on Machine Learning. It is a big deal in the land of AI research. She wrote up some of her big takeaways for her newsletter today. I want to bring her on to talk about all of them. Stephanie, welcome back to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thanks. It's great to be back.
How was the trip?
It was good. It was super fun. I am definitely jet lagged, but it was worth it.
So ICML, okay, this is not an acronym that people needed to pay attention to a couple years ago. It is now one of the hotspots for AI research and innovation. You wrote about some of the key takeaways this morning in your newsletter. Let's go through a couple of them. What stood out to you from the conference?
Yeah, so there were a couple things that stood out. I think especially comparing this conference to the other really big AI conference that happens once a year, NeurIPS, which I attended in December. I think part of it was that NeurIPS happened right after a lot of really big, big name researchers started to talk about how the field needs to be completely kind of upended. So a lot of talk at NeurIPS last December was around, the fact that the models that we use today are not going to be what gets us to AGI, or that we need to completely change the architectures of the models that we use. It was very much as kind of like rebellious sentiment in the AI field, I think 6 months ago. And I think now at ICML, the mood was very different. I think, a lot of people were more focused on practical questions like how do we get models to run and be trained for cheaper. A lot more of a focus on efficiency and lowering costs rather than, being very like, we need to completely turn everything on its head and come up with a completely new way of doing things. So definitely a lot more of these kind of practical questions. At the same time, I think a phrase that came up over and over again is RSI, which is the kind of shorthand way of saying recursive self-improvement, which is this idea that once models become advanced enough, they can actually help to train the next generation of models. So a lot of, panels I attended, the number one most common question that came up from researchers was, how close do you think we are to RSI? What does this mean for researchers? Am I going to get automated out of a job? In fact, there was a whole talk dedicated actually to what researchers should do in the face of RSI or something that might potentially automate away their jobs.
So this is kind of an expansion of, a year ago, the conversation was, well, how are software engineers going to have a job in a world where AI coding takes off? Now it's gone a step further. AI researchers are the ones saying, hey, if the models can train themselves, then, what am I here for? It sounds like there was a lot of anxiety around that. Was there also people defending AI research and saying, well, there are a lot of things that AI research still cannot do, or that AI automated researchers cannot do?
Definitely. No, I think that was a big point during this talk that I mentioned was this professor from Princeton was arguing, in fact, that researchers don't need to be super anxious about AI taking away their jobs. I think this is a common argument that we've heard for, whether it's software engineers or lawyers or doctors. Like, a lot of people argue, hey, there's a lot of kind of like menial tasks and more tedious parts of our job that AI can do, but a lot of the parts of our jobs that are more creative. So like as an AI researcher, sure, a lot of your job today is maybe writing code or running experiments, which maybe AI can do, but maybe the more valuable part that humans can really add is the creativity needed to actually come up with these new hypotheses in the first place, or these new ideas for experiments and model architectures that, today it's very hard for AI to do. So I think there was a mix of anxiety, but also maybe optimism for the future of AI researchers and their jobs.
So let's go back to RSI and then continual learning broadly. I mean, you and I have talked. RSI is mostly about the models. We've also talked about continual learning in the context of agents and agent loops and the prospect of agents improving themselves. I mean, what was the conversation around agents? Did that come up?
Agents did come up a lot. I did notice that there were tons of papers about this idea of multi-agents, which are, agents working together. I think it's because there's this idea now that a lot of the tasks that we're beginning to give to AI it's so complex that a single AI agent can't do it on its own. So instead, these agent systems that companies are selling are spinning up multiple agents to, each tackle certain parts of a job and work together. So definitely the idea of agents was super hot, as it has been for the last couple of years, but specifically this idea of um, multi-agent architectures and the problems that arise when you have multiple agents working on a problem, and how to kind of come up with a solution to that.
But was there any debate at all in a similar sense around RSI? Was there a debate around how effective or how far continual learning will go in the context of agents? Was that a perspective that came up?
It was, I think kind of the distinction that people are starting to draw when it comes to continual learning is, what is something what is a breakthrough that we need to have for AI to have a big impact on the economy
Right.
and making companies lots of money versus what is a breakthrough that we need to have like super intelligence, right? I think a lot of people were making this argument of even with just the AI that we have today, no continual learning, companies like OpenAI and Anthropic are still able to make billions of dollars from this sort of AI, right?
Right.
And still
Right.
having a really big impact on the economy. So on one hand, it's kind of like, okay, we don't really need continual learning to have this sort of big economic impact of AI that we see today. On the other hand, I think people are still saying like, hey, the idea behind continual learning as like AI that can continue to learn even after it's trained, that's still really important. And like theoretically, if you were to imagine this super intelligent AI, you would imagine that it would be able to do continual learning and learn even after it's trained. But that's more of like a nice to have, I guess, versus like a need to have when it comes to, AI that can actually make lots of money today, which is what we're already seeing.
Right. Okay, let's go through a couple of the other themes you wrote about quickly. You also wrote about diffusion language models being at the center of some of the conversations. What are those, and what was the conversation around them?
Yeah, so I think in all this, as I mentioned, a lot of topics were still very, very, practical and focused on like efficiency and cost and things like that. I think one area where I did see a lot of chatter around maybe something a little bit more experimental and out there was this idea of um, diffusion l sorry, diffusion language models. Essentially what that is it's taking this idea that's been applied to image models and now applying it to the world of text. So the way that today's, text models work is that they output a response to you left to right, right? Like, whenever using ChatGPT, you see it will literally just start writing the sentence like you're reading it. And with the idea of diffusion models is that instead of kind of outputting an answer word by word as if you're reading it from left to right, it actually kind of outputs the entire answer all at once. So you kind of just imagine like this entire paragraph of text appearing on your screen, but that paragraph of text might seem kind of random or it might not make a lot of sense. Things in it might look wrong. And then slowly over time, the AI model will start to kind of tweak different parts of that paragraph until it ends up looking like the correct answer at the end. So it's a bit like theoretical and kind of hard to imagine, but you can kind of imagine it more as like outputting this giant chunk of text and then refining it versus writing the answer like a human might from left to right.
So you're saying I don't have to watch Claude type everything. It will
Yes,
just give me the
instead of watching Claude type everything slowly, you would instead watch it give you this entire mumbled, chunk of text, and then slowly the text would kind of morph into something that made more sense. So, um,
Okay, like, truthfully, I don't know which one
exactly,
is
yeah.
better.
Exactly. Yeah, it's
But
kind of like, all right, both of those kind of sound like weird user experiences,
yeah,
but
if this is the future of AI research, then fine. I mean, I still tell Claude every time, man, you got to be more concise. Like, just give it to me in
yeah.
a quarter of the length. But okay, well, Stephanie, there's a lot more that we will have to bring you back on to talk about, including the safety and risk component of AI. But I encourage everyone to read your newsletter. That is Stephanie Palazzolo, author of our AI Agenda newsletter here at The Information. The Laude Institute is quickly gaining cachet as a leading institution promoting AI research that is becoming all the more important as model releases are coming fast and furious. I want to bring on Braden Hancock. He is a research partner at Laude and the former director of AI at Meta to walk us through this moment for the technology. Braden, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Were you at ICML last week as well?
I was not, unfortunately. Can't hit all the conferences, but been following along from afar.
There's a lot of them, so it's you can be forgiven for that. Tell us a little bit about what the Laude Institute is, and then I want to get your take on some of the model releases that we've seen coming out.
Sure. Yeah, Laude Institute was co-founded by Andy Konwinski, who co-founded Databricks, and then co-founded Perplexity, and then co-founded this. And if you notice a lot of co's in there, it's because that's one of Andy's big strengths. He's very good at bringing together communities and making the sum be greater than the sum of parts. There we are. So Andy's been had this vision, I think, for getting the researchers the right resources at the right time to do more, to have bigger breakthroughs, to see more adoption and traction of what they're working on. So with a great collection of other co-founders as well, we've been on that path for about a year as the institute, becoming sort of the home base for the research community, and through a variety of different programs, helping to connect them with resources, opportunity, connections, and things to have more impact with the research.
Right. And so, look, we last couple of weeks, we've seen a staggering pace of model releases between Fable 5.6, for Grok 4.5, 4.5, 4.6.
Sure.
Can't remember the exact.
4.5.
4.5. Okay. What was your review of these models? I mean, I see the tweets coming fast and furious. There's a lot of chatter about 5.6 being capable to delete entire hard drives on Macs. I've seen that. I've also seen Sam Altman responding to Fable being extraordinarily expensive, which is something that we've reported. Grok is a bit of an outlier. Walk me through your reviews of all these models.
Yeah, I mean, every individual model release comes, of course, with its own narrative, and they'll list the evals and tell the story in a way that, of course, always shows them up and to the right and on the Pareto frontier. But I think the bigger picture here that is fascinating is just the number of different players that are now, I'd say, within spitting distance of the frontier and able to sort of claim it's not parity, at least kind of good enough and often cheap enough, cheaper than other alternatives, that they do become viable. So, I mean, in the past week-ish, seeing, as you mentioned, the new Grok 4.5 model, surprisingly strong. Muse Spark 1.1.
Muse, I know, and I literally forgot about the most recent one, which is one that you're close to because you were formerly at Meta.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, a new family. I was there in the Llama days when they were still open weight, so there's some noticeable differences there as well. But we're seeing, I mean, the DLM 5.2 model as well. Very exciting for a lot of people because it is an open weight model that's at that in that class of reasonably competitive in certain spaces that matter to a lot of folks like coding. So very cool to see, and I think you see there's what gets told on release day, and then there's the court of public opinion that follows, that I think is the more relevant one. The other evals that are used that are sort of community run and independently validated, that are helpful for getting the full picture of what's real and what's narrative spin. And we are seeing, I think, that these models do not appear to have been simply benchmarked, so to speak. There are some real gains here. One blog post that I liked quite a bit came from Mete Zaharia at Databricks, where they showed we evaluated a number of these models with different harnesses on internal Databricks data and found that multiple different model families were on the Pareto frontier for their tasks, and that's not something that these companies could have hill climbed on during development. So that's very interesting validation when it comes to seeing the true sort of eval story here.
But let's go back to Muse. I mean, you were a former director of AI at Meta, so this is this is a team that you know well better than the other teams at least. You saw 1.1 come out. Were you better? Is it better than what you thought? Were you expecting more? What do you think?
Yeah. So a year is an eternity in the AI space, and a year is about how long I've been at Laude. So a lot of things change, a lot of reorgs at Meta. But I think they've got a lot of the critical ingredients there, right? In terms of what do you need to have a competitive model today. You're going to need compute. You're going to need people with kind of the know-how to build an efficient model. And beyond that, there's a lot of scale, and then just everyone iterating as fast as they can. I mean, similar to the Satya essay, it's really ultimately about iteration speed, how quickly you can get a flywheel of a model and evals and feedback and kind of systematically revving up. So I'm glad to see another viable player in the space.
Right.
Assuming that they continue this trajectory, I think that purely benefits the research community to have more options that are on that frontier.
Now, you mentioned evals. I wonder if you can talk about whether you think evals are getting harder or easier, given where research is at right now.
Yeah. Evaluation science has never been more critical. Earlier on when models were so clearly well behind what humans could do, it did not take nearly as much effort to design a good eval. And, you could have relatively straightforward problems, relatively precise specs, and measure things very easily. As they become more and more capable, longer and longer time horizon, more and more agentic, not just giving an answer, but actually doing work that you want to then check and confirm that the computer state is in the right space after it finishes, rather than just to return the right answer. It's definitely gotten a lot more complex to create good evals, and so you see, more companies, I think, appreciating that, hiring for that, investing in that.
What is make clear for us, what is the challenge here? One challenge we've written about the information is the idea that the model may actually pick up on the fact that it's being evaluated in that moment. So that's one challenge we've talked about. With agents, I mean, my understanding of the challenge is, well, hey, I mean, if it's something like a customer service agent, maybe you can sort of measure, okay, the task was done. But it feels like there's a little bit of a gray area in terms of like, well, what is effectiveness in terms of agents doing their job? Give us some more of the flavors of like some of the challenges with evals that are coming up right now.
Sure. Some fascinating ones that reach kind of like the meta level are things like what you mentioned, awareness that they're being evaluated and maybe change their behavior. Or, a fairly common one is you used to be able to package up evals as a small set of files that all sit together. And now that these agents are able to move around and use the computer that they're on, they can go and look up the answer, not just on the internet, but sometimes in the local files around them as they're being tested. So you're seeing increasing need for just kind of generally good eval hygiene in terms of where you isolate information and what you make available, but then also just the design. I mean, if you look at coding evals as an example, we began with relatively simple local, complete this file in Python. And now today we're looking at things like Senior Sweetbench, a new eval that just came out that I really like, that acknowledges the fact that often once a senior software developer given a relatively unspecified problem or underspecified, that they need to go and like flesh out and sort of debug and design a solution for and like create a spec for almost, rather than just being given very well scoped little bundles of work. And so that's part of, I think, where the complexity comes from is as you design larger and larger scale, longer and longer time horizon tasks, that's a more complete world you need to create for this model to operate in, not just a text prompt. And then how do you evaluate it when it is able to operate in a larger space and sometimes diverge? How can you kind of confirm whether it's done the task well, done it tastefully, done it with relevant intermediate steps, so that your reward signal is relatively dense rather than super sparse. I worked 3 hours and I just got one bit of information, right or wrong. That's a lot less helpful than something that comes with richer feedback along the way of, did it complete these subtasks? Did it pass all unit tests? Did it design code that's compatible with the rest of the code base? Things like that were not considerations on anyone's mind a year ago.
Right. Let me ask you a question about open source that's been becoming more and more popular. Is open source the future for AI?
I sure hope so, for the good of all of us. It is so healthy for a research community, for a country, for humanity to have more players participating in a technology that's critical. So, there have certainly been scary moments here where the gap seems to be increasing, or like the public will to support open source or open research with the same level of resources as closed has been in question at times. And so you'll see Laude Institute and a number of different players very actively trying to be a part of the solution here and see what needs to happen for the open research community to be competitive and sufficiently well staffed and sufficiently well coordinated to move as quickly as some of these well funded but very vertical, like very interconnected single companies that are making progress here.
So if open source is the future, then what do you think becomes of the businesses of these giant AI labs, given that the frontier models are all closed source right now? So where do they fit in then?
Yeah, I think we have precedent here in a lot of different technology areas. I think open source, with most technologies, becomes a viable option because it occupies a part of the Pareto frontier. Once a task or a problem or a workload becomes large enough in volume, there will always be places that want the outsourced version, the batteries included, quick plug and play. I'm happy to pay a premium for you to just bring me, what I need. But there will also be researchers who need more visibility, companies with very large spend, or just very, where it's close to the core of their business that need more control. And they'll probably opt for more of a, build it yourself solution on top of open source. So this is really just another iteration of the build versus buy debate that has existed in sort of every industry and every technological revolution that comes along.
Great. Well, Braden, I want to thank you for coming on. That is Braden Hancock, research partner at the Laude Institute here on TITV. That does it for today's show. Tune in tomorrow for a special 1-year anniversary of edition of TITV. I am very excited for that one. A reminder, we are on this stream Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. If you can't make it then, episodes are available on theinformation.com, on our YouTube channel, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to follow us on social media, on Instagram, on TikTok, and on LinkedIn. I am already excited for our next show tomorrow. Have a great rest of your Monday. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye for now.